The Galactic Council chamber was never truly silent yet. The day the screens lit up with footage from Earth's oceans, a strange hush swept over the gathered species. The projection floated above the center table, showing endless rolling waves, and then the camera dove beneath the surface, revealing shapes that made even the bravest warriors in the room recoil. Shadows of impossible size drifted across the water. Sunlight filtered down onto scaled bodies, and massive teeth glinted as predators swam close. The first image was of a shark, sleek and fast, its eyes black and empty, its mouth filled with rows upon rows of razors. The delegates whispered among themselves, calling it a machine built for death. The shark lunged at prey, smaller fish, scattering in fear. Then the feed shifted to something larger and slower, a whale moving like a mountain of flesh, its tail sweeping with such power that currents shook the smaller creatures around it. Alien diplomats who came from desert planets gripped their seats in terror, for the scale alone was overwhelming. The voice of the council archivist narrated over the images, explaining that these were not isolated monsters, but everyday inhabitants of Earth's waters. Millions of them roamed freely, and humans had grown up with them from the earliest days of their history. Then came the footage of the giant squid tentacles stretching into the darkness, curling with strength enough to crush a small vessel. Alien eyes widened as the squid clashed with a whale deep in the abyss, a struggle that looked more like the battles of titans than animals living in an ecosystem. Gasps filled the chamber. One delegate shouted that no world should ever have allowed intelligent life to evolve. In such an environment, surely Earth was cursed or crafted as a weapon. The camera shifted again to a coral reef teeming with color and life, yet hidden within that beauty were creatures with venom sharper than acid fish, with jaws strong enough to bite through metal shells, predators striking with speed faster than the eye could follow. The council archivist explained that the footage was collected by automated probes, for humans considered such things too ordinary to present themselves, but the council had insisted to see the full truth. They now stared at a living nightmare. None of them could imagine surviving. A delegate from the Arborians rose, trembling. Their people had abandoned oceans centuries ago after a single predator had nearly driven them extinct. How could humanity survive dozens of predators far worse, and not only survive but flourish? The question echoed around the chamber. Murmurs of danger spread. Others argued that humanity was not natural, that they had to be products of manipulation. No sane evolution would place a fragile primate among monsters, yet here they were building ships and spreading to the stars. The footage rolled on, now showing storms waves taller than buildings crushing ships, lightning striking the sea, boiling air and water together. Alien delegates shook their heads. For them, oceans were myths told in ancient stories, not realities that swallowed lives whole. The ocean itself seemed an enemy, merciless and eternal. Then the archivist pointed out that despite such conditions, Earth's oceans fed billions of humans. Their fishing vessels braved storms. Their submarines roamed the dark depths. Humans had mapped and conquered what the council saw as an endless battlefield. Suspicion grew quickly, the chamber filled with voices demanding answers. Were humans truly intelligent, or were they symbiotes of their monsters? Some feared that if humans could survive oceans, they could survive anything, which made them too dangerous to trust. The council chair struggled to restore order, banging a gavel against the stone table as the noise rose. The human envoy sat quietly at the edge of the chamber, a solitary figure with calm eyes. He had not spoken once during the entire presentation. He watched the fear build. He saw the way alien representatives leaned back from the images, and from him too, as if the very presence of a human carried the scent of the ocean beasts. Finally, the recording ended. The last shot, a human child standing on a beach, waves crashing behind him as seabirds circled overhead. The contrast between innocence and the deadly world that child called home left the council in shock. Silence returned, heavy and suffocating. Then voices rose again, sharp and fearful. Some cried that humanity must be isolated. Others whispered of extermination before the monsters of Earth spread beyond their cursed planet. The council chamber pulsed with dread, and only one question remained on every alien mind. How had humans endured in the heart of so much terror? That question did not yet have an answer, and the silence of the human envoy made it worse. The aliens left the chamber with their scales bristling. Their feathers ruffled their claws. Trembling, each one haunted by the images of creatures from a planet that defied reason. They had come expecting to judge humanity, but what they saw instead was a glimpse of something far beyond their understanding, a world where nightmares were real, and somehow had been tamed, though none dared speak it aloud. Not yet, but the fear had taken root and it would grow. The council chamber did not cool. Even after the projection ended, it lingered like smoke in the minds of every delegate for the rest of the day. The whispers traveled through corridors and across star systems. By evening, reports spread to entire fleets and colonies. Every major government debated what they had seen. Humans had always been regarded with suspicion for their strange resilience and their odd biology, but this was different. This was terror born from the realization that humans did not just live beside monsters. They lived within a world where every drop of water concealed death, and yet they still thrived. The Arborian speaker called for an emergency assembly demanding humanity be placed under strict watch. He warned that if humans could survive such predators, they might harbor instincts that no other civilization could predict. Others from the Kithari Union echoed his words. Their species had once been proud navigators of shallow seas, until one apex predator had nearly wiped them out. They still carried scars in their culture, rituals of fear passed through generations. How could they possibly accept a species that made its home among hundreds of such beasts? Some delegates took a darker stance one by one. They spoke of quarantine proposals, isolation protocols, even extermination options. It was said in hushed tones, but the meaning carried through the chamber. They did not want to wait until humanity revealed some darker truth if the ocean could forge such survivors. What else had it shaped within them? Suspicion turned into fear, and fear into the hunger for control. Meanwhile, the human envoy remained, seated silent as stone. His face gave away nothing. No anger, no defensiveness. Only the calm of someone who had walked through storms far greater than political words. Many aliens found his stillness more terrifying than rage, because it suggested patience and confidence. It suggested that humanity had no fear of the council at all. As the debate stretched into the night, a delegate from the gentle Ferali race rose, trembling. His fur puffed with unease. He recounted their own ancient seas and how a single leviathan had driven them from their waters into permanent exile. He said his people could not imagine a childhood spent near creatures that could swallow them whole. Yet humanity had built cities beside the waves they had sailed into, the storms, and returned alive. He asked the question openly that others dared not. What if humanity did not only endure the oceans but learned something from them, something dangerous? That question became the heart of the trial. Humanity was accused, not of crimes but of existing in defiance of natural law to aliens. It felt like a violation that intelligent life could walk freely on a world filled with predators that should have kept any fragile species in the shadows. Some even claimed that Earth itself was a weapon, a planet designed to forge warriors instead of scholars. The chamber turned to the human envoy at last, demanding he respond to the accusations, yet still he said nothing. His silence echoed louder than shouts, until the council chair slammed her staff against the ground. She ordered the envoy to stand and explain how his kind had not only survived but multiplied among such horrors. All eyes turned to him, breaths held as if the room itself would break apart in the pause. He rose slowly, his movements deliberate. He looked across the chamber at eyes wide with fear, feathers rustling, scales quivering, mandibles clicking. He let the silence stretch until it was unbearable. Then he spoke, his voice steady and calm. He told them that what they had seen was true but incomplete. The oceans of Earth were filled with dangers, yet those same oceans fed. His people carried their ships across vast distances and gave them partners that no alien mind had imagined. The council erupted at the word partners, voices overlapping in outrage. Some demanded clarification. Others called it a lie. The idea that humans could claim monsters as allies was too absurd to believe. But the envoy did not flinch. He promised proof, and he warned that fear was clouding the judgment of the council. The chair reluctantly agreed to a hearing the next day, where humanity would present evidence. Until then, the delegates left the chamber shaken and restless across the galaxy. The story spread, faster than light messengers carrying tales of Earth's cursed waters and the species that walked unharmed among them. Whole civilizations lay awake that night, wondering if the galaxy had welcomed a new ally or unleashed a predator too great to contain. As for the human envoy, he returned to his quarters where he prepared the next transmission from Earth, one that would not only answer the Council's fears, but reshape them entirely for humanity. Knew that fear alone was not enough. Sometimes truth was more terrifying than myth. The Council chamber filled once more the next day, tension heavier than the walls themselves, and delegates gathered with restless movements, claws tapping feathers, ruffled tendrils coiling in nervous patterns, every eye focused on the human envoy. As he stepped into the center light, he carried no weapons, no armor, no guards. He carried only a simple projection unit in one hand, as though the weight of an entire species rested lightly on his shoulders. The silence broke when the chair of the council demanded that he provide proof of his claims and that the galaxy deserved to know the truth of humanity's relationship with the beasts that haunted Earth's oceans. The envoy placed the projection device upon the table and activated it. What followed was not staged violence or the hunt of predator versus prey. Instead, the first images showed human divers suspended in blue water, their movements slow and calm as massive sharks circled them. One of the sharks brushed its fin against the diver like a curious pet, and the human gently placed a hand against it. The shark turned but did not strike instead. It moved closer as though recognizing trust. Gasps rippled through the chamber. The aliens struggled to comprehend why such a predator would not devour such fragile creatures. The next scene shifted to a pod of dolphins weaving through the water with uncanny precision. Humans swam beside them laughing, bubbles rising as the dolphins guided them through reefs at dangerous speeds. One dolphin surfaced and leapt into the air, spinning before crashing back into the waves. The divers clapped in joy as though celebrating a friend. The Ferali delegate whispered in disbelief, for his people had once feared smaller sea hunters that destroyed their fishing fleets. But here the humans treated hunters as companions. Then came the whales, their bodies vast enough to eclipse the light. The chamber shook, with the deep calls resonating through the footage as humans in small boats approached not to kill, but to sing back to them. The whales responded with voices that seemed to cross not only oceans but time itself. One whale swam beneath a boat, lifting it gently upon its back, carrying it for miles before lowering it again unscathed. The aliens could not speak as they watched humans embrace what for them was certain death. The final scene came from the Naval Archives, a recording of dolphins working alongside human soldiers, guiding ships through minefields, detecting dangers long before sensors could. The animals responded to signals as though trained, but more than trained. They appeared eager to help. The soldiers touched them with affection, and the dolphins lingered long after the task was complete. It was not control by force, it was partnership born of respect. The envoy allowed the images to fade, leaving the chamber in breathless silence. He spoke then, telling them that humanity had never ruled the oceans through dominance but through understanding. They had learned to live beside the beasts, respecting their power, and in time, earning their trust. The envoy said that when a human child swam with dolphins or when fishermen relied on whales to guide them away from storms, it was not a myth but daily life. The oceans of Earth were filled with death, yet also with allies no alien species had ever dared imagine. The chamber erupted again, yet this time it was not purely fear. Was confusion, outrage, disbelief clashing with a seed of awe? Many delegates refused to believe that monsters could be allies. Others whispered that if humans had achieved this, then they must be far more dangerous than anyone had thought, because if they could befriend death itself, then perhaps there was nothing in the galaxy they could not bend to their will. A delegate from the Cathari shouted that this was proof humanity was unnatural. No species could hold the loyalty of predators. He demanded sanctions, he demanded exile. But another delegate from the Illyrians rose and argued the opposite. He said that if humans had tamed oceans, then they might hold the key to survival against galactic threats that none of them had ever prepared. For his words clashed with the fear spreading like fire across the chamber. The human envoy stood calm, letting the storm of voices wash around him until at last, the chair struck the ground with her staff. The council had heard the evidence and could no longer deny that humanity's world was unlike any other. The chamber stood divided, some trembling with dread, others staring at humanity with a strange new respect. The envoy bowed slightly and left without another word, leaving the council to battle over their own fear. Yet as the doors closed behind him, the whispers did not stop. They grew louder with every passing moment, and one truth began to sink deep into alien hearts. Humanity was not merely survivors of a death world, they were something else. Something the galaxy was not ready to define, and that thought chilled even the bravest among them. The next session of the council was unlike the ones before. For now the fear had taken root and transformed into sharp divisions. Some delegates entered the chamber with fury in their eyes, determined to demand that humanity be cast out of civilized space. Others came in hushed reverence, their minds caught on the images of predators swimming in peace beside human children. The air was charged with suspicion and wonder. In equal measure, the chair of the council looked worn, her scales dull from stress, yet she raised her staff and called the chamber to order. The human envoy rose again, and this time he did not bring any devices, no projections, no recordings. He simply carried his words. He explained that humanity never believed they had conquered the oceans. Instead, they had accepted them for what they were, a place of beauty and terror, mixed together where survival demanded humility and respect. He told them that for every story of a human swallowed by the waves, there were countless stories of lives saved by whales guiding ships away from danger, or dolphins alerting sailors to threats that no machine could detect. He said the bond was not one of domination but of coexistence, the kind of relationship that demanded courage, patience, and trust. A murmur spread through the chamber. Some delegates sneered at the idea of trust with monsters, yet others leaned forward, curious, their instincts telling them that what they had seen in the proof was more than coincidence. The envoy continued and spoke of ancient traditions on Earth. He described Polynesian navigators who crossed vast oceans by reading the stars and listening to the songs of whales. He spoke of fishermen in Arctic seas who shared their hunts with orcas. He spoke of coastal villages where sharks were feared yet respected, treated not as enemies but as part of the world the humans were born into. At that point, a delegate from the Shalari collective rose, trembling. His people were desert dwellers who had long ago abandoned water after droughts nearly destroyed them. He demanded to know how humans had not simply fled the oceans. If their world was cursed with so much danger, the envoy answered calmly that humanity never fled from challenge, because to flee would have meant surrendering half of their planet. They chose instead to learn and endure until what was once feared became familiar. This answer brought a long silence across the chamber. Some aliens shifted uncomfortably, for they had fled from their own challenges in the past, abandoning seas or mountains or storms to hide in safety. The realization stung pride and deepened their unease. The debate that followed was bitter. The Arborians once again demanded isolation, claiming that any species capable of taming predators would soon turn those skills upon the galaxy itself. The Illyrians argued fiercely in defense of humanity, insisting that their ability to bond with dangerous beasts might hold wisdom. None of them had discovered yet. The chamber roared with competing voices, and suspicion boiled until the chair struck her staff again, demanding silence. The envoy then spoke once more, saying that humanity did not seek fear nor worship. They sought recognition as equals, not as threats. He said that if the galaxy wished to understand humanity, they must first understand Earth, that no human could ever be separated from their oceans, for the oceans were not only their home, but their teacher. Some delegates whispered to each other about the implications of such words. If oceans could teach humans, then what had they learned from a world where storms, crushed ships, and predators lurked in every shadow? What kind of resilience had been carved into their bones, and what kind of instincts had been shaped in their minds? The envoy ended his speech with a warning spoken softly, yet carrying through the chamber. He told them that fear often led to foolish choices, and that to mistake respect for weakness would be an error. The galaxy would not want to test. Then he bowed and stepped back into silence. The chamber was left in turmoil. Some eyes glared at him with venom. Others studied him with awe. And in that clash of emotions, the seeds of something greater were sown. The council could no longer pretend that humanity was ordinary. They had been forced to see them not only as survivors, but as something entirely new, something born from oceans that no other species could endure. The debate stretched far into the night, and even as delegates returned to their ships, the whispers followed each of them. No one could unsee the images. No one could unhear the calm certainty in the envoy's voice, and no one could escape the truth that for the first time in memory, the galaxy faced a species shaped by monsters yet unbroken, and the thought of what might come next haunted them all. The day of proof arrived, and the council chamber was filled to its highest galleries. News had spread across star systems, and representatives who had never attended before now crowded into the vast hall, eager and fearful to witness what humanity would reveal. The human envoy stood in the center once more. But this time he was not alone. Beside him stood two uniformed officers from Earth's Navy, calm and disciplined, their presence adding a quiet weight to the moment the envoy addressed the council with measured words, promising that what they would see next was not legend or myth, but live evidence broadcast from Earth itself. The chamber dimmed, and the great screens lit up with new images, this time not drawn from archives but carried directly from Earth's oceans by vessels prepared for this very demonstration. The first scene opened on a stretch of open sea sunlight, glittering on waves as a small human ship floated, seemingly vulnerable. Then the waters beneath stirred, and from the depths rose the shadow of a whale, vast and magnificent. Its back broke the surface, and with slow majesty it surfaced alongside the vessel. The humans aboard reached out not with fear, but with reverence, hands brushing against the whale, as though greeting an old friend. The whale lingered, lifting its massive head as if acknowledging them before sinking once again into the deep. The aliens whispered among themselves, some clutching at their armrests as though they had seen a god. Others muttered that this was deception carefully staged, yet before doubt could grow, the feed shifted again to show human divers entering the sea. Among them swam dolphins, sleek and fast, darting around the humans in playful arcs. The dolphins responded to hand signals from the divers, guiding them through underwater caves and retrieving objects placed for demonstration. The chamber gasped as one dolphin gently nudged a diver upward toward the surface when his oxygen supply ran low. The dolphin remained at his side until he was safe on the boat. The evidence did not end there. The next transmission revealed sharks circling beneath a floating platform. Aliens recoiled in instinctive fear, yet the humans stood calmly at the edge and stepped into the water. The sharks approached, but instead of attacking, they slowed, circling at a respectful distance. One swam close, its mouth open, revealing rows of teeth, yet the human touched its side without hesitation. The shark twisted and swam away, without aggression, leaving behind a stunned audience who had expected carnage. The last demonstration silenced even the harshest critics. From the depths came a pod of orcas, their black and white forms slicing through the sea as they approached the human vessel. The orcas performed deliberate movements, responding to whistles and hand signals. They pulled ropes connected to the ship, assisting in its maneuver through treacherous currents. They even retrieved floating debris, presenting it to the humans like gifts. The envoy explained that these creatures had been partners for generations, their cooperation with humans not forced by chains but offered freely through bonds of trust and shared survival. When the feed ended, the chamber erupted into chaos. Some shouted that no evidence could excuse the danger of a species who could turn predators into allies. Others demanded to know how such relationships were possible, their voices rising in disbelief. Yet beneath the uproar lay a growing unease, because the truth was undeniable. What they had witnessed could not be dismissed as illusion. The envoy raised his voice above the storm, telling them that humanity had never sought to dominate the oceans. They had learned that strength lay not only in weapons but in coexistence where others saw only death. Humans saw potential allies where others fled. Humans remained until respect was earned. He said that this philosophy had shaped their very identity, making them both feared and misunderstood across the stars. The Illyrian delegate rose and declared that what they had seen was not a curse, but a gift, that humanity had endured the harshest lessons of nature and emerged with wisdom few others could comprehend. He argued that such resilience might serve as a shield for the galaxy itself in times of crisis. His words struck deep, though many resisted them. Opposition remained fierce. The Arborians snarled that humanity's bonds with monsters proved only that they, themselves, were monsters in disguise, that no species could walk among predators and remain innocent. Their call for isolation grew louder, supported by others who trembled with the thought of humans unleashing tamed beasts upon the galaxy. The chamber stood on the edge of violence, voices colliding, fear clashing with reluctant awe. The human envoy remained calm, his expression unreadable, as though he had known from the beginning that truth would divide them. His final words echoed across the chamber, telling them that humanity asked for no worship and no fear, only recognition that they were children of a world unlike any other, and that the strength of Earth's oceans now flowed in their veins. As the council session adjourned, no one left unchanged. The proof had been given, and the galaxy would never again look upon humanity as ordinary. In the silence that followed, many realized that the question was no longer whether humanity could tame monsters, but whether the galaxy could live alongside a species who had done so without hesitation. The council chamber felt like a battlefield without weapons. Tension draped over every delegate like a heavy cloak. Some came still trembling from the proof they had witnessed, while others carried anger. So sharp it cut through their words, the Arborians began the attack, demanding once more that humanity be confined to their world. They argued that taming predators was more dangerous than any weapon, for it meant humans could unleash nightmares. On the galaxy itself, their voices rang with fear and hatred, and many nodded in agreement. Yet others spoke in defiance. The Illyrians stood proudly, declaring that humanity had shown not cruelty, but harmony. They reminded the chamber that in all the evidence, no chains had bound the creatures, no machines had forced them. Instead, the beasts had chosen to stand beside humans. They asked the question no one else dared. Why would monsters ally with prey, unless that prey was something greater than it appeared? The human envoy listened in silence, his gaze steady, his posture unbroken. The council chair finally turned to him, demanding an explanation of how this coexistence was possible. She asked what secret humanity had discovered that no other race had ever achieved. The envoy rose, and his calm voice filled the chamber. He said there was no secret, only patience and respect. He spoke of how humans learned to study the patterns of predators, how they learned when to fight and when to yield, how they accepted fear as part of life instead of fleeing from it. He explained that a child on Earth learned the ocean not as enemy, but as teacher, that the ocean punished arrogance and rewarded humility. The chamber reacted with disbelief. Many shook their heads, unwilling to accept that survival could be won without force. But the envoy pressed on. He told them that humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons, but its ability to endure, to adapt, and to build relationships where others saw only walls. He described how fishermen once followed dolphins to find schools of fish, how sailors believed whales carried messages through the seas, how even the deadliest storms became lessons passed from one generation to the next. He said, humanity was shaped not by conquering the ocean, but by learning to live within its mercy and its wrath. Some delegates were visibly shaken by his words, remembering their own histories. Their ancestors had fled from challenges that seemed insurmountable: deserts, storms, predators. They had abandoned worlds that frightened them. Humanity, however, had never abandoned Earth. They had grown within it, and the result now stood before the galaxy, strong, unbroken, and mysterious. The Arborians hissed again, accusing the envoy of deception. They claimed humans must have used hidden weapons to control the beasts, perhaps drugs or devices buried within the animals' minds. They could not imagine a reality where predators acted of free will. The envoy did not raise his voice. He simply answered that distrust was natural for those who had never known the ocean. But truth did not change because of disbelief. The Ferali delegate, timid and shaken, asked a question that silenced the chamber. He asked if humans believed they could do the same with creatures beyond their own world, if they could tame monsters that haunted other planets. As they had with sharks and whales, the envoy considered carefully before replying. He said, humanity never sought to tame for conquest. They sought to understand, and in understanding bonds might form. He left the possibility hanging unspoken, and it was enough to send ripples of unease through the chamber. That moment marked a shift. Some no longer saw humanity as cursed. They saw them as unpredictable and far more dangerous than before. Because if humans could one day build bonds with monsters across worlds, then nothing in the galaxy would remain beyond their reach. The fear deepened, but so too did the awe and respect. The council chair declared the session ended, but no resolution was reached. The delegates left, divided, some calling for war, others for alliance, and others simply lost in thought. Yet all of them carried the same image in their minds of humans standing, unafraid beside the ocean beasts of Earth. In the corridors beyond the chamber, whispers spread faster than light, fear mixed with fascination and admiration. Entire delegations sent urgent reports to their governments warning that humanity could not be measured by ordinary standards. The galaxy had uncovered a truth that could never be hidden again. Humans were not merely survivors of a death world. They were something else entirely, something forged by the ocean and tempered by monsters. And in the quiet of his quarters, the human envoy prepared for the next day, for he knew that the council had not yet reached the true realization he was guiding them toward. He knew that awe and fear were only the beginning, and soon they would have to confront the most unsettling truth of all. The galaxy had begun to whisper in hushed tones about Earth and its humans. The stories traveled from system to system, each retelling, growing more elaborate, more terrifying. Some claimed humans commanded beasts that could swallow entire ships. Others insisted they could calm storms with a glance and tame predators with nothing but a hand. Outstretched, the council chambers now echoed with fear and curiosity. The delegates could no longer ignore the humans, nor their ocean beasts and debates. Raged late into the cycles, the Illyrians argued that the humans' connection with nature proved their intelligence and adaptability, while the Arborians insisted it was a dangerous perversion of power that could not be tolerated. Meanwhile, on Earth, the human fleets moved silently across oceans and the beast moved alongside them. Massive shadows gliding beneath the surface waves that sparkled in the sun. The whales breached with grace and sharks circled with precision. But there was no fear. In either party, each knew the rhythm of the other. Each trusted instinct and intellect in a way that outsiders could not understand. And those who had once seen humans as weak or reckless now began to see them as a force shaped by empathy and fearlessness. The humans were patient. They planned carefully, and they communicated in ways alien species could not begin to comprehend, signals that combined sound gestures and shared intuition. The beasts responded instantly, adapting to changing conditions, as though guided by a mind far larger than any single creature. Back in the council chamber, the debates had escalated into a storm of accusations and demands. Some systems called for a preemptive strike, warning that if humans were allowed to continue, expanding their influence, soon no planet would remain untouched, while others counseled patience, claiming the humans had not yet proven themselves aggressive, merely unpredictable. The human envoy watched from the balcony of the chamber. Unmoved by threats, he knew the true measure of their power lay not in weapons, but in the bond they had forged with the creatures of their own world. And soon that bond would be tested in ways the galaxy could not yet imagine. Then the first report came, of a human vessel entering uncharted territory, accompanied by a pod of leviathans so large that sensors struggled to measure them, their bodies breaking the waves in arcs of liquid silver. The news spread across star systems faster than any communication. A ray could transmit. Entire fleets were diverted to intercept these humans who had long been considered legends, and the whispers turned into panic as commanders tried to imagine how such creatures could be controlled in the vacuum of space. Some argued that humans must have discovered a way to genetically modify the beasts. Others feared the animals themselves had evolved to follow commands telepathically. The truth, however, was far simpler. The humans had studied the creatures they had, listened to their rhythms, understood their hunting patterns, and gained their trust, and trust was stronger than chains, for it could not be broken by force. As fleets converged near a neutral system, humans and beasts emerged together like shadows of nightmares tempered with beauty. Whales leapt beside ships, their song vibrating through the water and through the sensors of alien vessels. Sharks moved in patterns that mirrored the humans' maneuvers like a dance. Older than any war, the commanders felt unease ripple through them, for they could see no threat being posed. Yet the presence alone inspired fear. The humans were calm and controlled and utterly confident, as if they knew the universe itself had no secrets for those who were patient enough to learn it. The Arborians decided to strike, claiming that fear alone was reason enough to attack, and as their ships advanced, they were met with a force no one could anticipate. The humans released signals that called the ocean beasts into action. The Leviathans surged with precision, crushing hulls of warships that had assumed superiority. The sharks swarmed with speed and coordination, unmatched by any military training. And yet at no point did the humans raise weapons for the creatures, acted without violence toward those who were not immediately hostile but absolute and unrelenting, toward any who sought destruction. The galaxy watched in awe as a planet's predators became the extension of human will and instinct, and the lesson was clear: humanity's strength was not only in survival, but in connection and understanding, and anyone who underestimated it would pay a terrible price. The council convened once more, the chamber filled with silence this time, as they watched live. Transmissions from Earth and the reactions of delegates were varied, some trembling, others pale with shock. Many could not comprehend that a species thought to be prey had become a master of predators and circumstance. The envoy addressed them once, more his voice steady and calm. He said that humans had never sought war, but they had learned to be prepared that power was not always about conquest. Sometimes it was about coexistence and foresight, and those who ignored the lessons of Earth did so at their peril. And as the oceans of Earth roared in unison with their masters, the galaxy realized the terrifying truth: humans had tamed monsters that no one else could command. They had forged bonds that could not be broken. And from that day forward, every corner of space understood that to face humanity was to face a force of nature itself, a force that respected neither fear nor underestimation, and that in the ocean's depths lay a power older and deadlier than any weapon. The humans stood at the waterline, watching their companions surface and breach the waves. They did not boast, they did not celebrate quietly. They knew that understanding and respect had forged this alliance, and that the galaxy would never again see them as mere survivors. They were something else, something unbroken and unstoppable, something born of Earth's oceans and tempered by its monsters. And in that moment, the stars themselves seemed to bow to the rhythm of humanity, and their ocean beasts, the oceans of Earth, glimmered under the fading light of the twin suns as humans moved along the shoreline, their eyes scanning the horizon not for danger, but for the familiar silhouettes of their companions, massive whales and sleek sharks cutting through the waves in perfect harmony with the humans who had raised them. The planet was alive with a rhythm that only those who understood could feel, each creature moving as if it were part of a single consciousness, a symphony of life and trust and power that no one from beyond the stars had ever witnessed. The humans did not need weapons, for they had mastered something far older and more profound than any technology. They had forged bonds with the ocean beasts that went beyond instinct, beyond fear, beyond obedience. They had become partners, equals, in a way that left the galaxy's most advanced civilizations in awe and trembling. Reports of the humans' latest maneuvers traveled faster than light across star systems. Fleets diverted. Planets abandoned plans for conquest as the legends they had mocked became reality. And nowhere was the scale of their mastery more evident than in the deep oceans, where creatures that had once been feared as unstoppable predators now followed human commands with precision and grace. The whales could lift entire vessels with a flick of their tails. The sharks could herd enemy crafts into formations that disrupted entire battle plans. Yet at no time did the humans take joy in destruction. Their faces were calm, their presence commanding respect and understanding alike. Delegates from the Galactic Council gathered once more, and for the first time there was silence. Not the nervous silence of doubt, but the reverent silence of realization. They had underestimated humans for centuries. They had assumed a planet so young, so seemingly fragile, could never produce beings capable of commanding life itself. But the oceans had become humanity's proving ground. Their skill, their patience, their empathy, and their cunning displayed not as a threat, but as a warning that true strength lay in understanding the world and all its creatures. The envoy spoke, and his words resonated across communication channels, touching every listener with the same undeniable truth: humanity did not need to strike to dominate. They had tamed the wildest forces of their own world, and that mastery was more terrifying than any weapon. As fleets and observers watched from orbit, the humans called to their ocean companions. The waves erupted in a coordinated display of power and intelligence. Whales breached in arcs that could crush structures beneath the water, and sharks moved with such unity that no tactic could evade them. It was a demonstration, not of brutality but of absolute command. The galaxy saw that humans had become not conquerors, but symbiotic rulers of their environment, blending courage with compassion and force with restraint. A species that had learned that the strongest chain was the one built from trust, that the fiercest weapon was not a missile or beam, but an alliance forged over countless generations between predator and human. And the lesson could not be ignored. The oceans belonged to them, and anyone who challenged them would face a force older than fear, older than war itself. And yet the humans stood quietly on the shore, watching their companions move effortlessly through the water. They did not gloat. They did not celebrate. They had no need for arrogance, for their victory was in survival. In respect and coexistence, the galaxy could tremble and debate, but on Earth, the rhythm of life continued undisturbed, and in that harmony lay a power that no one could challenge. The oceans had chosen their masters, and humanity had risen to meet them. The stars themselves seemed to pause and take note, as if acknowledging that a new era had begun, where humans were no longer merely inhabitants of their world, but stewards of a power that even the gods of the galaxy could not ignore. And in that moment, the humans knew that nothing could break the bond they had forged, the creatures they had tamed, and the legacy they would leave would echo across the cosmos forever. The end.